Hello guys. So in this video we will manually configure our API gateway routes. In a previous video we configured this API gateway service by automatically. So all the requests will automatically redirect to our user service. But in this video we will configure that manually because we will have the more control whenever we are configuring that manually. Okay. So before configuring that, so I want to change one thing, that is we have this application like Spring API gateway. So just add WS here and go to the our user service also and just add the WS, because whenever we are triggering this URL, so we have user two times, so that may cause the confusion. So it is better to we have this WS as the extension in our Spring application name for user service and API gateway. Configuring that, let me show you one thing to you, that we are adding this user right in a capital letter. So it is not a good practice to have the capital word in our URL. So whenever we are working on any projects, our URL that must be the your small scale. That is the best practice. So to add this support, we need to add one more properties. That properties is this. So we need this property. This will do all the service URL we are adding this. So it will be in a small case, right? User hyphen WS. Okay, let's check this and we will jump on our manual configuration. Let's run our discovery service, user service, Spring Cloud API Gateway. Let's check the Eureka server. You can see our API gateway, Spring Cloud API gateway, and user service is registered in our Eureka server. Go to this URL and send the first. We will send this with the capital letter. Right, right. It is not working. So and now we will send this in a small letter. Now it is working. So now our in the service name in a small letter, that is working. Okay, let's go to our Spring Cloud API gateway. Now, as we are working on the manual configuration, just we don't need this. We need to add some properties. Let me add that. Okay, let me explain the one by one. So this is our Spring Cloud API gateway route. This is the common property whenever we are writing this manual configuration. So we need to add these properties. Our ID is the user status check. So this is the ID for this our status check API. This is the unique ID we need to add. Second is our Spring Cloud API gateway route, that is URL. So this URL is the user service URL because we don't know the user service address, right? So that's why we need to add this URL whenever our Spring Cloud API gateway call our Eureka server, and it will return the available instance of our user service. Let me show you why we need this. In our user microservice, we added this server.port, so it will create random port. So in advance, we don't know the which port it will create. So that's why we added this property, right? We added this property, this load balancer property. It will call the Eureka server and it will get the available instance. Okay. Second, this is the third property, that is a predicate. So we know the predicate is just like the if statement, right? So it is work like similar like if the if statement. Whenever we trigger this URL from the our postman or the any of the external application, so it will check that this external URL and this URL is match or not. If that URL is match, then only it will execute our next code, or it will redirect the request to our APIs. This next predicate is the method. So in our user service, we are triggering the status check API. Let me show you. We are triggering this API, right? We are triggering this API, and this is the get API, right? So that's why we are adding this as a method is a get API. So this is the identity of our API that we are triggering. If we trigger any post API or a delete or any of the put API, then it will not trigger this URL. This it will not trigger this API. Okay, and as we are not working on any of the cookies, as in a next further video, we will work on the Spring Security as a JWT token. So that's why we don't need these cookies. So for security reason, we remove that all the cookies that present in the our request. Okay, so that is done. Let's restart this application. Let's check. Our API gateway service is up and it is registered to our Eureka server. Go to our Postman. And to trigger this API manually, let me show you. It will create this URL like this because our predicate will check this URL, right? So that's why we added this predicate. Let me show you that we added this predicate, right? So it will trigger this predicate. Means the at last the it will create the URL like this. It will trigger this predicate and it will create the URL like this. This is our user service address, and after that this is our API address, right? API URL. So it will trigger this predicate. And second is that we have this get method, and similarly we configure the get method. This method is the get. Let's try it is working or not. Now you can see we got the response that is working, means our manual configuration for Spring Cloud API Gateway is working fine. And as we have this method get, suppose we change this method to the post, so it will not work, right? So it will trigger that only whenever we are adding this get method because we have this predicate. Similarly, in previous video, we also configure this URL, right? We added this user WS and this URL. Now we already remove this automatic configuration, this auto route configuration from our Spring Cloud API Gateway service, and we have only one predicate like this URL predicate. But as per our configuration, though, so this URL should not work because it have this our user address, user service address, and this is our API URL. Let me trigger that. You can see now this URL is not working, means our manual configuration is working fine. Whenever we need more configuration, so we need to add this type of configuration in our Spring Cloud API Gateway. Yeah, this is all about the Spring Cloud API Gateway for manual configuration. And one more thing, you may have question that from where we are getting this filter, right? So this is the Spring Cloud API Gateway filter. So we don't need to write this filter as of now. So in further video, we will write some filter and we will check that in our URL. So as of now, let's understand that. So it is the internal filter, and we don't need to configure it. This is all about this manual configuration. In the next video, we will learn more about this Spring Cloud API Gateway.